Hi, I'm Brody Barnes, and thank you for tuning in to today's episode of History Highlights. History Highlights is a podcast where we go over history topics chosen by you, the listener. So if you have another topic in mind, make sure to reach out to us at History Highlights on any social media platforms. Without any further ado, let's get started. Today, we'll be going over the Second Great Awakening. The Second Great Awakening was a powerful religious revival in the United States between 1795 and 1835. I'll be talking about the two main effects that the Second Great Awakening had on the United States. And those effects were that it boosted all other reforms that were happening during that time, and it led to the expansion of Christianity, and further led to two more denominations being created because of it. In the 1800s, the United States underwent many changes. Some of these changes were reforms such as the Second Great Awakening, the temperance movement, the abolition movement, the women's rights movement, and the education reform, as well as many others. The main one I'll be focusing on today is the Second Great Awakening, but its effects had an impact on all these other reforms as well. However, before I can get into that, I'll tell you a little bit about the Second Great Awakening first. For a little bit of background, the Second Great Awakening was a huge Christian revival in the early 19th century. It was known for its emotional preaching and the shift from a Calvinistic view on religion to a more Protestant look on it. There were around 25 to 50,000 people that converted to Christianity during this time, according to the Christian History Institute. This is one of the biggest national revivals to happen in history across the world. This didn't just have an effect on Christianity, however. It was shown in other aspects of people's lives as well. Some of those ways consist of stronger morals, a more positive outlook on life, etc. This led to new reforms and making other reforms exponentially bigger. Before the Second Great Awakening, there were a few anti-slavery groups, but they weren't very big and didn't have very much influence on anything. However, this changed quickly during the Second Great Awakening. Many preachers that were preaching during the Second Great Awakening spoke out against slavery, calling it a sin and saying that it should be shut down immediately. Even some of the biggest leaders of this time, such as Frederick Douglass, William Lloyd Garrison, Sojourner Truth, and Harriet Beecher Stowe, found themselves inspired by their faith to stand out against slavery. Along with that, a reform that was almost started directly by the Second Great Awakening was temperance. Now, if you don't know what temperance was, it was a movement that wanted abstinence or strict control on alcohol. Alcohol consumption was very high in America during the early 1800s. The National Archives says that the average person drank 7.1 gallons of alcohol per year during the 1820s. That's a lot. In the United States, as of 2022, the average person drinks about 2.5 to 3 gallons of alcohol annually, according to Gallup News. That's less than half the amount of alcohol consumed during the 1820s. And Prohibition ended in 1933. If you don't know what Prohibition was a law that banned all sales of alcohol and was made during the temperance movement. We've been out of Prohibition for almost 100 years, and we still haven't gotten close to reaching the levels of alcohol consumption of the early 1800s. Many Americans were inspired by many of the teachings, such as ones about self-control. The last reform that I'll be talking about is the women's rights movement. For a little bit of context, during this time, women had little to no rights. Some people even went as far as saying that black men that were enslaved should be entitled to more rights than women that weren't slaves. They were determined to change this with the help of the Second Great Awakening. The women's rights movement already had a decent amount of people, but the Second Great Awakening helped to get more people to support it. Many people of the church that were women, and their involvement in the Second Great Awakening taught them skills such as public speaking and organizational skills that would be able to be used at their meetings. Much like the abolition movement, Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Lucretia Mott were inspired by their faith. There were many other reforms also affected by the Second Great Awakening, but I won't have time to get into them today. However, if y'all would like, I'll talk about those on another episode. Along with having great effects on other reforms during this time, two big denominations in Christianity today came from the Second Great Awakening. Those two denominations are Baptists and Methodists. While the Second Great Awakening was happening, the United States was still expanding. This made it especially easy to hold outdoor meetings. These sometimes would draw crowds of over 10,000 people. This made it very easy for Baptists and Methodists to grow their denominations. Methodists were often preachers that traveled on horseback. They would preach anywhere they could. They focused a lot on emotional, personal, and simpler preaching styles to reach their audience. This made it very easy for people that were new to Christianity to get a better understanding of the faith. Baptists didn't travel like Methodists did, but their churches were decentralized, which meant each church didn't have to listen to a main church like how Catholics do. This made it very easy for Baptist churches to be popped up on the frontier or just be made anywhere. This led to a lot of them being made on the frontier, like how I said. During the Second Great Awakening, it grew to be one of the biggest religious groups in the country with 500,000 members. Even though these had many differences, they also shared a few similarities. They both appealed to new Christians that might have been rejected by a more traditional church, mainly because of the different preaching styles. Well, folks, thank you for tuning in to this episode of History Highlights. Today, we talked about the two main effects of the Second Great Awakening, being the effect that it had on other reforms and the two denominations that came from it. Now, you can go tell some friends or family about what you learned today. I hope that you enjoyed this episode. If you enjoyed it, make sure to share it with a friend or two. Until next time, stay curious.